I moved to Sycamore Ridge to escape the chaos. After 15 years in the military and 5 more managing logistics for a national freight company, I was ready for quiet, peace, predictability. My little ranch-style house at the end of the cul-de-sac offered all three, plus a long, private driveway where I could park my rebuilt Ford F-150 and my weekend warrior, a 32-foot Sea Ray cruiser named Salty Justice. It was all going well until Karen Appleton got involved. Karen, president of the Sycamore Ridge Homeowners Association for 9 years running, ruled the neighborhood like a monarch in capri pants. She had a perm that hadn't changed since 1987 and a voice that could cut drywall. The HOA bylaws were her sacred scroll, and violations, no matter how trivial, were treated like capital offenses. The first note she left on my door was about my truck. Vehicles must be less than 15 years old to meet community standards. I checked the bylaws, no such rule existed. I ignored her. Then came the letter about my boat. Your marine vessel disrupts visual harmony, it read. Please relocate within 48 hours. I smiled, slid the letter into a folder labeled nonsense, and kept polishing Salty Justice every Sunday like clockwork. Karen hated that boat. Still, I tried to keep things civil. I waved when I passed her in the cul-de-sac. I paid my dues on time. I even attended one HOA meeting, just one. That was enough. It was 90 minutes of Karen reading bullet points while the rest of the board nodded like synchronized parrots. Things stayed mostly quiet until the knock. It was a crisp Friday morning, a week into September. I opened the door to find Karen standing there in a mauve blazer and matching clipboard. We need your driveway, she said. No hello, no preamble. Excuse me? For my daughter's wedding. We're hosting a ceremony in our backyard. Her fiancé's family is flying in from Charleston, and the limo needs a safe, flat place to park. Yours is the only driveway long enough. She said it like it was already settled. That's not going to work, I replied. Karen's expression flickered, as if she'd misheard. Oh, but the HOA approved it. We voted during the August meeting. I wasn't at the August meeting. The agenda was posted on the corkboard by the tennis courts. Karen, I said, keeping my voice even, you can't vote to use someone else's private driveway. That's not how property rights work. Her smile turned brittle. You're new here. You'll understand in time. This community thrives on cooperation. Cooperation doesn't mean commandeering someone's property. She blinked, like I'd just spoken a foreign language. It's just for a few hours. One day. You won't even notice. I'm not giving up my driveway. Her eyes narrowed. That's disappointing. I hope you'll reconsider. For the good of the community. With that, she turned and walked away, her heels clicking against the pavement like a metronome set to threatening. I shut the door, but I didn't relax. Something in her tone told me this wasn't over. The next morning, I found a printed notice taped to my front door. HOA notice of violation. Boat must be removed within 72 hours to preserve neighborhood aesthetics. Failure to comply may result in fines. I stared at the letter, then at my boat, gleaming under its custom tarp, resting perfectly within the boundaries of my property. It wasn't about aesthetics. It was about control. Karen had drawn her line. I made my coffee, opened my laptop, and started reviewing the HOA's charter in detail. Every clause. Every footnote. I didn't plan on moving my boat, but I wasn't going to war blind either. That evening, as I was washing the truck, I noticed orange cones at the end of my driveway, 2 of them, placed neatly across the entrance. A laminated sign was zip-tied to one. Reserved for wedding vehicle, HOA approved. My blood simmered. She hadn't even asked again. She'd just taken. I moved the cones aside, parked my truck as usual, and sat on the porch with a cold beer, watching the sun dip behind the pines. Karen had escalated this. She thought I'd fold. She thought I'd do what everyone else in this neighborhood did when she barked orders: roll over and comply. But I'd spent years in places where people tried to take what wasn't theirs. And I never gave an inch. Not then. Not now. Not ever. I thought moving the cones would send a message. That maybe, just maybe, Karen would take the hint and back off. But I underestimated how far a person would go when drunk on power and armed with a clipboard. The next morning, my mailbox was gone. Not dented. Not tampered with. Gone. Post-cleanson, cement base cracked like a tooth knocked loose. I stared at the empty patch of earth for a long moment, phone in hand. Already dialing. A patrol car arrived an hour later. A young deputy stepped out, sunglasses on, expression unreadable. I showed him the footage, grainy but clear, of a landscaping truck pulling up in the pre-dawn hours. 2 men hopped out, one holding bolt cutters, the other a saw. They yanked the mailbox like it owed them money, threw it in the truck bed, and drove off. "You recognize them?" he asked. "Can't see their faces, but that's the crew Karen uses for her lawn. Same truck. Same crew. I've seen them every Thursday for the past year." He nodded slowly, then exhaled. "Technically, this falls under civil damage, not criminal mischief. You can file a report, but without positive ID or an eyewitness, the DA's not going to push charges." "Even with video?" He shrugged. "No faces, no plates, no case." So Karen was bold and smart. She knew exactly how far to push without drawing real blood. I reinstalled the mailbox, this time reinforced with a steel post sunk 2 feet into concrete. If she wanted another swing, she'd need a wrecking ball. But the fight had already moved into a higher gear. 3 days before the wedding, I received a second notice, this time from the HOA attorney. A cease and desist order for noncompliance with neighborhood standards. It was barely a page long, dressed up in pseudo-legal jargon and threats of mounting daily fines. No HOA board signature. Just Karen's name typed at the bottom, all caps. I scanned the bylaws again. I wasn't in violation. The boat was registered, covered, and parked on my own property. There was no rule about how long a recreational vehicle could remain in a driveway unless it was unlicensed or in disrepair, which salty justice was not. Karen didn't care. She wasn't playing by the rules. She was rewriting them to suit her whims. The day before the wedding, a delivery truck arrived. I watched from the porch as workers unloaded folding chairs, floral centerpieces, and a massive white archway onto Karen's perfectly manicured lawn. Her backyard had become a wedding showroom. Everything was pastel. Blush, ivory, lilac. Over the top didn't begin to describe it. I counted no fewer than 6 floral towers and 2 champagne fountains. It wasn't a backyard ceremony. It was an Instagram influencer's fever dream. And then the limo showed up, a hulking, pearl-white behemoth with dark-tinted windows. It pulled into the cul-de-sac and idled, the driver stepping out to stretch, then glanced at my driveway like it belonged to him. He pulled out his phone and made a call. 2 minutes later, Karen strutted across the street in a beige power suit, her neck weighed down by enough gold to anchor a skiff. She tapped on the limo window, conferred with the driver, then walked directly up to my porch. "You have until morning," she said. "This vehicle will be parked in your driveway during the ceremony. Please move your truck and boat." "I've already told you. You've made your stance clear," she interrupted. "But this isn't about you. It's about my daughter. Her big day. Family harmony. If you continue obstructing this, you're hurting more people than just me." "That's not my driveway on her invitations," I said. "That's mine. And it's staying full." She narrowed her eyes. "You'll regret this." She turned on her heel and left, heels clicking like the tick of a bomb. I sat there long after she was gone, beer in hand, watching the limo idle. The driver looked annoyed, checking his watch, glancing toward my driveway like he was sizing it up. That's when the idea hit me, not just how to fight back, but how to end this whole charade with something Karen couldn't ignore. She wanted the spotlight. Fine. I'd give her a show. The night before Karen's wedding, I made my move. I wasn't the kind of guy who went around making spectacles of myself. But there were limits. There were lines you didn't cross, even for a ridiculous HOA president in love with her own authority. And when she moved from a ridiculous request to outright theft, she had crossed that line. I spent the evening preparing. The boat needed to be relocated, and I wasn't going to just park it in the driveway. That would be too easy. I needed something bigger. Something impossible to ignore. I called a buddy of mine, Paul, who owned a towing company and happened to be a good guy with a taste for mischief. Paul didn't hesitate when I told him my plan. He knew what I was capable of and didn't need any further explanation. You want the boat to block her driveway, right? We'll make it a statement, Paul said with a grin in his voice. How soon do you need it? I could hear the click of his tools in the background, the sound of a job well done. Tomorrow morning, I replied. First thing. At 6 a.m., Paul and his crew arrived with a flatbed trailer and a crane. They had the boat loaded in minutes and carefully drove it down the road, towards Karen's house. I watched them from my porch, my heart racing a little. I wasn't just about to make a stand. I was about to create a scene. The kind that would end this HOA mess for good. Paul eased the flatbed into position, just past the start of Karen's driveway, and slowly lowered the boat into place. It blocked the entire entrance. The shiny white limo, now parked just across the street, wasn't going anywhere. I stood back, taking in the sight of the boat, my boat, sitting proud and firm, a clear message to anyone who looked. And then I waited. It wasn't long before I heard her. Karen stormed across the yard, her steps angry and quick. She was dressed in an elegant jacket that didn't fit the occasion. Too stiff, too formal, the kind of thing you wore to a corporate meeting, not a wedding day. What is this? She screeched, her hands going to her hips in that patented, I'm in charge here stance. I didn't move from my porch. It's my driveway, I said simply. You wanted it. I decided to park my boat in it. And it's staying there. She looked at the boat, then back at me, her face scrunching up in disbelief. You can't do this. This is a violation of HOA policy. Funny, I said, leaning back in my chair. I haven't seen that policy anywhere. But hey, I'm sure you'll send me another letter. That seems to be your thing. She advanced, her voice rising with each step. You're ruining my daughter's wedding. I stood up slowly, keeping my composure. I'm not the one who decided to force someone else's property into their wedding plans, Karen. You've been making everyone's life miserable for months now. But you've made one mistake this time. You've picked the wrong person to bully. Her hands clenched into fists. This is my neighborhood, she spat, her voice trembling with frustration. I've been the president of this HOA for 9 years. You will move that boat, or I'll make you pay. The threat hung in the air like a storm cloud, but I didn't flinch. I've got the papers, Karen. You want to fight me over a driveway? We'll see who gets the last word. Her eyes narrowed. She turned and stomped back to her limo, calling for the driver. She wasn't backing down yet. I knew that. But I wasn't backing down either. As the limo driver approached, I took my time lighting a cigarette, the smoke rising in lazy spirals around my head. Karen stood at the curb, pacing, and the driver simply stared at the boat as if it were a building blocking the road. Paul and his crew had done their work well. The boat was perfectly placed, tight against the curb, a silent but firm challenge to everything Karen had tried to control. Karen was already on her phone, no doubt trying to wrangle another plan, but I wasn't about to make this easy for her. I waited, knowing I'd won the moment she stopped barking orders at everyone else. It took about an hour. Finally, the limo driver gave up, shaking his head as Karen clutched her phone in both hands like a weapon. Fine, she called out, turning back to me, her face flushed with rage. But you haven't heard the last of this. I didn't respond, watching as she marched back into her house, muttering under her breath. When I was sure she was gone, I leaned back in my chair and exhaled deeply. The battle wasn't over, but I'd won this round. And in the game of HOA power plays, sometimes that was all you needed, one good shot to make everyone else think twice. I looked at the boat again, feeling a little satisfaction ripple through me. The neighborhood would remember this. The best part? I didn't have to lift a finger. Karen had done all the work for me. The next morning, I woke up to the sound of tires screeching. I stepped outside just in time to see Karen's wedding guests trying to find their way around the boat, their luxury cars crawling in confusion. There was no way to bypass the boat without driving up onto the curb, but they were already trying, cars tilting awkwardly as they circled the cul-de-sac. It didn't take long for Karen to show up. Her wedding dress was immaculate, though it was a little out of place for someone who had spent the last 24 hours fuming over a boat parked in a driveway. She approached me, her hands trembling with barely contained rage. "You did this to my wedding," she shouted, her voice cracking as she waved at the scene of her guests stuck in traffic. "You think this is funny? I think it's pretty effective," I replied coolly, leaning against the porch railing, arms crossed. "No one's going anywhere until they get a clear path." She wasn't even listening. Her face was purple with fury, and she turned to the limo driver who had been waiting, helpless, for the better part of an hour. "Move it," she snapped at him. "Move the boat." The driver looked at me, then back at her, clearly caught between the two of us. "Ma'am, I'm not sure how." "I'll handle this," she barked, and with a final look at me, stormed over to the boat. She was either too blind with rage or just too accustomed to always getting what she wanted to realize that the boat was not going to be moved easily. It wasn't just a matter of turning a key and revving the engine. The boat was firmly anchored in place, weighing tons. No amount of huffing and puffing would get it out of the way. "Karen," I called to her calmly, "you got two options. You can either go back inside, enjoy your wedding, and pretend this never happened, or you can fight me and waste your entire day trying to prove a point that no one cares about. Your call." Her chest heaved with every breath, and for a moment, I thought she might charge me. Instead, she stopped, her face twitching. "You're a monster," she spat, her words like venom. "I'm calling the cops. You'll regret this." "I'm sure you will," I said, unshaken. "But I'm not moving the boat." Karen's eyes darted around as if searching for help, but the limo driver had already gone back to his vehicle, probably wisely deciding that any further involvement in this drama would leave him with a headache. She glanced at her guests, still milling around, frustrated and confused, but no one had any answers for her. I wasn't about to make it easy for her. The HOA couldn't do anything to me. The boat was parked legally on my property, and there was no HOA rule that addressed it. She could try to escalate it, but in the end, it was my word against hers, and I had video footage to back me up. She stood there for a long moment, staring me down. Her face was pale, the mask of authority slipping for the first time. For the first time in a long time, Karen was powerless. After what felt like an eternity, Karen broke first. Her shoulders slumped, her anger deflating like a punctured tire. "Fine," she muttered, her voice barely audible above the soft murmur of her guests. "I'll move the wedding." I smiled. It wasn't a triumphant grin, but a quiet acknowledgement that I'd won, without even having to raise my voice. "Good choice," I said softly. For a moment, I thought Karen might lash out again, but she just turned and walked back to her guests. The sound of her heels on the asphalt was a distant echo as she ushered them all to the front of her house, away from the chaos in the driveway. As the minutes passed, the tension lifted from the street, and guests began to scatter. Karen, though, was still fuming in the background, giving me the occasional glare as she tried to salvage whatever was left of her wedding day. Later that evening, I got a knock on my door. To my surprise, it wasn't Karen. It was the HOA lawyer, his face unusually calm as he stood on the other side. "I'm not here to escalate this," he said, handing me a thick envelope. "But Karen's filed for another hearing over the boat. She's convinced you violated some vague rules about aesthetics." I opened the envelope without a word. The lawyer didn't press me, but I could tell he was waiting for something, maybe an apology, maybe a sign of regret. Instead, I just closed the door behind him, the envelope still in my hand. I didn't need to open it. Karen had lost. The HOA had lost. And the streets would know it. It wasn't just about the boat anymore. It was about standing up for what was right, about fighting back when someone thought they could just walk over you because they had the power of the association behind them. Karen might have gotten the wedding she planned, but I had won something far more valuable, my peace. And as the sun set over the neighborhood, I felt more at ease than I had in months.